Hello everybody, it's Renari. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. Today is a very special day, a very special video, because I am doing my first theory video ever. This is going to be the ENHYPEN universe theory. This is completely new to me, so I apologize if this isn't formatted the same way that you might see from other theory videos out there. And I first want to preface that I did not mean to copy anybody, so if you see anything in this theory that is directly taken from another theory video, it is just coincidence. I have created all of this by myself in my head, theorized, analyzed all the videos, and I am giving credit where I got information from other people. So if you do see anything that matches somebody else's theory, I guess we're on the same wavelength, but I haven't actually looked into anybody else's theories at this point, and so I'm excited to show you what I've come up with over the last 12 hours. I spent pretty much last night up until 2 a.m. I have about 9 pages to get through, so I'm going to make this as quick as possible, get all the details down with you guys, and hopefully it is told in a way that makes sense and that follows chronologically to the best of my ability, and then I'll break things down for you at the end. First, I'll just go over everything with you just as I have it written. Now, I first would like to thank on Twitter and in my comment section at Haunted House, Jess and MMA for theorizing with me, for planting this seed, the foundation of this theory, and giving me a kind of a start line here, because MMA in the comment section had mentioned that somebody on Twitter noticed that in Sanu's concept films there was a bust of Artemis, which is a Greek goddess in Greek mythology, and that made my brain go wild. I have a degree in English and history, and I was just going nuts with that. We were going back and forth about the possibilities, as well as Jess and at Haunted House have given me some things that help to prove my theory, and so I'm here to explain it all for you. And I believe it was at Simple K-Pop Fan and at Sumeows on Twitter. One of them, both of them, I looked throughout Twitter and I saw that they looked to be the first that had this idea of Sanu and the bust and Artemis and what that could mean. So thank you for that foundation. I didn't really go into if you had posted anything more than that in depth. It didn't look like it, at least not to the depth of this, but I'm definitely starting with something that they have created and then giving you all the details to support this theory. So without further ado, here is my ENHYPEN universe theory, the first vampire clan. So what do you need to know first? First, you need to know a little bit about Greek mythology. I'm not going to get into it too in depth. If you want to look up these gods and goddesses by yourself and see more details about them and see how this story flows, I encourage you to do that, but I'm just going to give you the basics you need to understand the rest of the theory. So let's start. So this isn't even really confirmed in Greek mythology. It's somewhat of a myth even within the mythology, but there was a man named Ambrogio who was Italian. He went to the Oracle of Delphi and he fell in love with the goddess Selene. So he was just a human man who had fallen in love with this immortal goddess. Unfortunately, the sun god Apollo was also in love with Selene, and he was not happy to hear about Ambrogio. Once Apollo found out, he got so angry that he cursed Ambrogio so that he could never walk around in the daylight again. It would burn him to be in the sunlight. That is a quality, of course, we know about vampires. Ambrogio at this point made a deal with Hades so that he could still be with Selene for as long as possible. He wanted immortality. Hades, of course, accepted the deal as long as he did something for him. So Hades wanted Ambrogio to steal Apollo's sister, Artemis's silver bow and arrows. So we have Apollo and Artemis, they are twins. Apollo is the god of the sun, Artemis is the god of the moon. So Ambrogio said of course he would steal the bow and arrow so that he could stay with Selene forever, but Artemis found out about his plan and she cursed the bow and arrow so that it would burn him. Ambrogio then apologized and she forgave him as long as he could prove his loyalty. So to prove his loyalty to Artemis, he had to never fall in love again, which he agreed to, even though we know that he was in love with Selene and that would never change. With his promise, Artemis granted him with some special powers. She gave him speed, strength, hunter-like abilities, fangs and claws, as well as healing powers. After Ambrogio was now all-powerful and immortal, Apollo, finding out about these two deals, cursed Selene so that she would be mortal and she would die, and that Ambrogio had to live with that forever as an immortal now. Sometime later in life, Ambrogio started to make a clan of vampires in him and Celine's image. He treated them as if they were his children. Ambrogio creates this clan in Florence, Italy, and they were mostly willing participants that wanted power and immortality, and they were willing to trade their souls for it. The clan eventually grew in size, and there was some civil war going on. There was some infighting between the different vampires who wanted to do different things with their life. There's not too much that we know about the clan itself or what happens, but they do say that Ambrogio is still somewhere in Italy. So at this point, what you need to know is that Apollo was so angry that he cursed this man Ambrogio and made him the first vampire. He was given his abilities that we know as vampiric, super speed, super strength, healing abilities, and immortality by both Hades and Artemis, and then we have the burning of the skin in the sunlight from Apollo. So essentially 3 different gods created what we know to be a vampire. So what does this have to do with ENHYPEN? Obviously, ENHYPEN has a vampire concept, but this theory is going to prove that Sanu is the first vampire. He is Ambrogio, and who cursed him? Jake. Jake in this universe is Apollo. He has cursed Sanu to this vampiric life. And for the rest of the members of ENHYPEN, they make up the vampire clan, the first vampire clan, and this will lead to infighting and a civil war. So let's get into how we got to this theory, breaking it down video by video. Let's start with Intro Walk the Line. So in Intro Walk the Line, there's not too much going on story-wise, but we do have Jake narrating, which is interesting, because if he is Apollo, he is still kind of pulling the strings and making sure that we're listening to what he has to say rather than Sanu. We have Camminare sulla linea. I do not know how to pronounce that, but that is an Italian phrase for walk the line. So we already have that connection between Italy and Italian in the song. And Jake the whole time is talking about the sky, the sun, the light, and how confident he feels about going into the light. And it makes me feel like Jake is almost taunting at this point Sanu to come into the light. I believe that Sanu spent years, hundreds of years, in hiding in his castle because his love, Celine, had passed away. He was probably very depressed. He couldn't go outside because of the sun. But I think that Sanu has been training. I think that over the hundreds and hundreds of years, he has gotten to a point where he can go out into the sunlight just enough that he doesn't die or burn up. He might create some smoke. It might be a little painful, but he is harnessing his powers and suppressing that burning. He is essentially removing or suppressing the curse that Apollo put on him, yet keeping and enhancing the abilities that were given to him by Artemis. And we see in the castle that he does have a bust of Artemis, so he does still look up to her or feel that she is protecting him in some way. So now we'll get into Outro Cross the Line. We see a boy walking through the woods. He has a cape on. He's going. It looks like he's stalked or watched by this wolf who seems to be following him. It's interesting because Apollo is associated with wolves. He is not the god of wolves, but he is associated in some writings and some texts to be a god of wolves or to have some connection with wolves. So it's very possible that at this point this is Jake watching over what Sanu is doing, almost as if he's shape-shifting or he's sending an animal to go and watch over to make sure Sanu isn't up to anything. The path through the woods eventually leads to a castle, and I believe that the boy in the cape is Sung-hoon, and I think this is telling the story of when he first went to Sanu's castle, he stumbled upon it, and then Sanu bit him. We see the boy running away after he encounters the castle, running and running with fear. And then we see a mask with a bloody fanged smile. And I believe that is the point where Sung-hoon has turned. The mask in question actually looks the most like Sung-hoon's from the Up concept films and photos, but that one looks the most like Sung-hoon. So I believe this boy was Sung-hoon, and he was the first vampire that was turned by Sanu. So now we'll get into the invitation. So I believe that this carnival or bloody birthday, I'm going to address them as the same thing at this point since we don't know exactly what's happening. This invitation to the carnival is finally when Sanu is devising his plan to change people. He's inviting the townsfolk to his castle with the intent to change them. And any innocent people that aren't changed or turned into a vampire, I'm sure, died. So this is going to be an absolute bloodbath. So in this one, we see a boy who most closely resembles the outfit of Jay from the up version photos. The mask, the blonde hair, and the double-sided buttoned shirt match Jay. And I believe that because he's shown riding a horse, that he is working for Sanu. I'm under the impression that he might have actually been a human for a very long time, working with Sanu in the castle, just as an extra hand, and Sanu didn't turn him. Or that he in some way was helping Sanu before when he was a human, but at some point did get turned into a vampire after Sung-hoon. Now getting into the lyrics, it says, "Here in the land of rebel powers, gloriously decorated." This could be Jake signifying that Sanu's carnival is all just for show, that Jake knows that bad things are going to happen, that he knows about Sanu's plan. The Harvest Feast of Light, or the Festival of Blood, time harmonizes laughs and screams, also showing imagery of what might happen at this festival with everybody turning or dying. Death once dead, there's no dying then, signifies the death of the human soul on the quest for immortality and vampirism. We gladly swallow time like it's our last breath. Because they're all taking their last breaths as humans, I believe that they're just talking about that because I don't think vampires would need to breathe anymore. And then from the great beyond, that voice rings out again, "Come inside the castle, take everything." So I think that is Sanu calling to these townsfolk, "Come inside the castle." The voice rings out again, is implying that he's going to do the same thing to these people that he's already done to Sung-hoon. If you come into the castle, I am going to take everything from you. Of course, from the great beyond, Sanu is a vampire. He is already dead in the sense, at least Sung-hoon is, based on how he changed. And so this dead corpse-like state is beckoning to them. Take everything could also be an incentive for people to come, or an incentive for them to become vampires. Take all of the powers and the good that comes with being a vampire. So this boy that we are seeing in the invitation, I believe to be Jay. So we see this imagery of him walking down steps, of him on the horse. I think that he is going to have an issue with Sung-hoon now being a vampire, and so he asked to be turned as well, so that he could better help and serve Sanu. Okay, so let's get into Choose Chosen. So let me give you a little bit of background on what I think is going on with Jake. Jake is Apollo in this universe. So if Jake is Apollo, then we've seen in Greek mythology tons of times gods and goddesses coming down to the human world and impersonating as humans to breed or to have sex. That is a big thing in Greek mythology. So I believe that he is impersonating a human at this point. So he has all the characteristics of a human, but he probably can't die if he is a god. So if he is impersonating a human, what is it to say that he can't impersonate a vampire? So in Choose Chosen, we have Jake as a narrator again, and he is almost speaking on behalf of the clan. I believe that Jake is now impersonating being a vampire to get into Sanu's good books. We'll get into this a little bit more later, but he says, "At dawn the sun rises to menace and bless our fleshy selves." Now, I don't think a vampire would have fleshy selves. I don't think they would describe themselves that way. So I think that was Jake slipping up a little bit. He's supposed to be a vampire. He's supposed to be human. Really, he's a god. So maybe he said fleshy to go with his human side, what he's showing as himself. But a vampire, I don't think would say that. But if he's in Sanu's good books, he must be a vampire, or Sanu would try to change him. At the end of the shot, we see Sung-hoon front and center, and then we see Sanu withdrawn a bit to the back. So this instantly reminded me of Twilight Eclipse, just because we have Victoria and Riley in that film. If you haven't seen it, Victoria plays puppet master and Riley does everything that she says. I believe that's what's happening with Sanu and Sung-hoon. I believe Sanu is taking a backseat approach to this. He is pulling the strings, but Sung-hoon is going to be his puppet. Sung-hoon is going to be the one changing people and doing exactly what Sunwoo wants. Essentially, Sung-hoon is going to be Sunwoo's right-hand man. So we're about to expand more on Jake being a fake imposter vampire. We see Sunwoo looking afraid on the chair. That's followed immediately by a scene of Jake in the car, and it's this red tinted lighting over him, and he almost looks like he's contemplating something. I believe that this is when he is considering if he should impersonate himself as a vampire to get into Sunwoo's ranks. Meanwhile, we have Nikki looking like he may be changing, or at least showing the process of what that would be like. It seems like it's a painful process, maybe what happened to him at the carnival. We see Sunwoo look off to the side, and immediately we see an image of Sung-hoon smirking, as if, again, Sung-hoon is ready to do anything for Sunwoo. We have Jung-won, who is constantly running in the forest. It's almost as if he knows what's going to happen to him, possibly that he had escaped the carnival already, and he knows that these vampires might be chasing after him. This is immediately followed by imagery of Sung-hoon, and it makes it seem like Sung-hoon is the one that is chasing after Jung-won. So we then have a scene of Jake biting himself, and then it looks like he's biting Jung-won. Now, let's fast forward very quickly to the hype concept films. Jake is the only one that we don't see in red lighting. Throughout all the concept films, red lighting, a red filter is very prominent in all of them, less in Hee-sung's, which will come up, but Jake's, there's no red whatsoever. And so this leads us to believe that he is an imposter. He's not a vampire, he is just a human. On his photos for this, we also have the word breathe. The phrase is only in blood we breathe, but the breathe part is associated with Jake. If they are vampires, and if Jake is a vampire, he wouldn't need to breathe. So it is interesting that that word was associated with him. So then the image of him biting Jung-won, I believe, was actually him just showing Jung-won what is going to happen, showing him that Sunwoo is going to try to bite him. I think at this point Jake has found Jung-won and is telling him that he needs to be careful in this area around Sunwoo, or that he's going to get bitten. I think that Jake is trying to get Jung-won on his side. Now, when Jake removes his arm from his mouth, we do see that he has blood dripping down his mouth. I again would assume that vampires can't bleed. We might see the flesh of them if they get cut, and it might be red or pink because of muscle and what used to be there. I'm not exactly sure in this universe how dead they are, how corpse-like they are, but we see it actually dripping blood, like he sucked blood out of his arm. Now, a vampire, I would assume, can't do that to themselves, so I think he, as a human, just bit himself so that he would have a bite mark, so that he could show Sunwoo that he was also a vampire. He might have created some excuse to do with Apollo, get in his good side, say that the same thing that happened to you happened to me. I'm not exactly sure on the excuse that he would have given Sunwoo, but I do think that the bite mark that he gave himself is probably just to make sure that he has his backstory straight. Okay, we then see Jae watching Sunwoo fly up to his tree and sleep upside down. At this point, it's very interesting because Sunwoo is using his vampiric powers, and it's almost like he's the most comfortable using it. He's been doing it for several years, just proving the theory that he is probably the first vampire and has been practicing over all these hundreds of years. And at this point, I believe that Jae has already been turned. I think everybody except for Jung-won has been turned. Jake, of course, will never be a vampire, but I believe that Jae is watching Sunwoo to be his right-hand man. At this point, I think that Jae is so jealous that Sung-hoon is able to help Sunwoo more than Jae has been able to, and that Sunwoo has almost pushed Jae to the side. And so I think Jae is just doing anything he can to be able to serve Sunwoo. We see Hee-sung. I think he is the most recently turned out of them, and it's almost like he is having a hard time with this change. He's having a hard time accepting himself as a vampire. He doesn't know where he should be. He doesn't know if he is good or bad or what. He is just this new being, and she's trying to get through that, and we'll see that imagery come up again and again. Sung-hoon also seems very comfortable, as if he has been a vampire for a long time, at least being the second vampire, and we see him taking off his shirt. Now this, I believe, is him testing his capabilities. Sunwoo has gotten to the point where he doesn't burn up in the sunlight, and I believe Sung-hoon is testing his ability to do that as well, and that as time goes on, all of these vampires will be trained so that they can go into the sunlight. Then we see Nikki gesturing to come closer, or he's gesturing that he needs help. So we'll see why Nikki is so interesting later, but for now we just have that gesture of his hand being out, beckoning to somebody in some way. We see Hee-sung's reflection in the mirror disappear, almost as if he has lost himself. Of course, when you're turning into a vampire, you're probably losing some of your soul. You are turning into this different being. I believe that's Hee-sung kind of accepting that he is now changed and that he is never going to be that human that he used to know. We see Jung-won facing his fears. He's coming out of the forest. He's clearly out of breath. He's been running. He looks almost wary for a split second there of joining the clan. And then when the sun comes out, we see smoke. So we do know that most of them are vampires. You can't see exactly where the smoke is coming from between each member, but we do see that they are smoking and not completely burning and dying. So that leads me to believe that they are practicing being out in the sun and overcoming at least the curse that Apollo set upon them. And then we have Give and Taken, which opens with Jung-won and his nose is bleeding. Of course, if you're bleeding, you're probably still human. So I believe he is human at this point, and we do see him getting bit later. So going through the music video in order again, we have Hee-sung, who I believe again is the most recently turned vampire. He starts by just talking about his first day as a vampire. Wake up in day one, first day morning, lights shining, eyes of the sun, which could be very terrifying as a vampire, waking up to sunlight and having that burning sensation. So I'm sure he is recounting that. But that is instantly paired with Sanu, who is in the middle seat and everybody else is around him as if he is the leader. He's been telling us this from the start, okay? He tells his story. That light burned me, that light blinded me, but I go now, follow my dreams, dive into red sun, no lie. So he is saying that the light burned, blinded him, but now he has a goal. After all these years, he now knows what he's going to do. He's going to make a clan of other vampires. And now he's going to dive into the red sun because he has learned to overcome or suppress that curse. We have Jay versus Jake, which it almost seems like Jay is sizing Jake up. He's trying to see how Jake is going to react to him looking at him in that specific way. So Jay says he was wandering in the forest. There were countless stars, countless moons. I was wandering in the woods of questions. I believe that is him wandering, following Sanu around, wondering what he can do to serve him, wondering why he might not be good enough, why Sanu has chosen Sung-hoon over Jay. Jay, in my theory, has been there for a very long time as a human, and instead Sanu chose to bite this random person that has stumbled across the castle, and that started the whole plan. When he is looking at Jake, he even tilts his head a little bit, as if he's questioning Jake, as if he's considering what his role is in this clan, what his motive is for being here. And Jake responds, I followed the light in the dark, as if he was looking for the correct thing to say, as if Sanu might be the light in the dark. And then we instantly see fate in blood written behind Sung-hoon. Again, it was fate that he became Sanu's servant. It was just a chance that he ended up stumbling into the castle. We also see on the bathtub the red blanket that he used in the Dusk Dawn concept, which he was using to practice his powers so that he wouldn't get burned by the sunlight. Sung-hoon says, you calling me over the thin line, I who calls you. So again, the thin line could be at this point going over to this dark side, becoming a vampire, or at least joining Sanu's side of good versus evil. If in this phrase, you calling me over the thin line, I who calls you, the one calling to Sung-hoon is of course Sanu. At this point, he is completely in Sanu's grasp. Anything that Sanu says, Sung-hoon will do. So Nikki was bitten after Jay. He was probably one of the first ones bitten at the carnival. I imagine that he did not want this to happen, and he is probably trying to fight against Sanu as well with Jake. The only thing is that Jake and Nikki don't know that they're both fighting against Sanu. Nikki is a vampire, but he's doing things for his own motives and goals. He's not going to out himself as being against Sanu. Meanwhile, we have Jake, who is a human pretending to be a vampire. He is not going to out himself to anybody except for his secondhand person, which is Jung-won. So I believe that Nikki was chained up before defying Sanu. At this point, Sanu is probably an evil leader, and Sung-hoon probably chained him up with Jae just to make sure that he shut up and didn't backtalk or did not do anything against Sanu's wishes. Sung-hoon is constantly developing his powers. We see him with his hand on fire and he's examining it. I believe that he is getting more and more powerful, and in this universe, I'm not sure how you get specific powers, but I assume over time things can develop. For instance, going back to Twilight, if you had superpowers as a vampire, it was something you were very good at as a human. So it might be something similar to this. Maybe Sung-hoon is just powerful because he was good at something else when he was a human, and that is transferring itself into these vampiric powers, so he now has the power of fire. This is interesting because in the invitation, when we saw Jae walking down those stairs, there was fire everywhere. Jae was on his mission to go and make sure all the townsfolk came to the castle, and Sung-hoon probably set some place in the castle on fire out of anger because he wanted to be the one to do that. And it seems at this point that Sung-hoon and Jae are really fighting to be Sanu's lead servant. So Sung-hoon sings, "Oh, I walk to you, I link the two worlds." As he plays puppet for Sanu, he may even be more powerful than him. He may be the one that's turning people, so he's walking to Sanu. He's the one that's linking in the two worlds. He is making sure that these townsfolk and human become vampires. Jae repeats, "Oh, I walk to you till I reach the new world." Again, these are two people that just want to please their master. So we see Hee-sung dealing with his vampirism. He still doesn't seem comfortable with it, but we do see him taking pills. Now, I believe that Jake is giving Hee-sung pills to suppress his vampiric abilities. I believe he's giving him pills to almost change him back into human. And so he needs to keep taking these if he's going to be back on the good side. And I think that's why Hee-sung is so stressed out, because he doesn't know what to do. He's given these pills. I assume that Jake bribed the nurses that we see in the photographs, or bribed Sanu, or let him know that these pills were good and they were going to help with his powers when they weren't. Instead, he's going to suppress them. He's going to almost change Hee-sung back into a human. We'll see evidence of this later. Now, just a quick thing while we're at the course, the whole lyric of Given or Taken is really questioning whether these vampires have chosen their life or if Sanu took away their old life. In the original myth, it said that they are mostly willing participants. So far, we have one. We have Jae being a willing participant, and then we have Jung-won being a willing participant, but not because he wants to be a vampire, because he wants to thwart them. So at this point, Given or Taken, were they given these powers, or were their old lives taken away by Sanu and Sung-hoon? We see Jung-won on the outside looking in, metaphorically saying that he is the newest vampire now, and he's not ready to join them, as well as he is on the other side. He is not there to be a part of their clan. We see Nikki floating. He's saying, "Between giving and taking, it's time for my proving." This begs the question, what is he proving? I can only assume that he's proving that he is able to destroy the clan or Sanu's power and prove to Sanu that he is on his side to be able to infiltrate and destroy him. At this point, it does cut away, but I believe this is the moment that Sanu does bite Jung-won and make him into a vampire. I believe that maybe he kept him human for a little bit just to make sure that he was trustworthy. And then he does get turned. Because he is one of the first willing participants, it must be scary for Sanu to put all of his trust in Jung-won. So I do think that Jung-won wanted this and asked for this because he doesn't seem afraid at all. Sanu goes in to bite him and Jung-won just lets him. And the only reason that Jung-won wouldn't be afraid of this is because he has been warned by Jake. He knows what's about to happen and he's prepared and ready to fight with Jake. So now let's break down what's happening a little bit with these characters. We have this hierarchy right now. So now let's look at the hierarchy that we have right now. We have Jake, who turned Sanu into the first vampire. We have Sanu that bit Sung-hoon. Jae, who was a willing participant and asked to be bit by Sanu. What happened at the carnival, which led to two loyal followers that we know of, which is Nikki and Hee-sung in that order. Nikki was first. He does not want to be a vampire though. He does not want to work with Sanu, but he's going to hide it very well. We have Hee-sung, who is the newest vampire, and then he is struggling a lot. And Jake at this point has infiltrated the rankings, and he is part of the clan as well, saying that he is a vampire and that he was bitten elsewhere. Potentially there were other people at the carnival that were bitten and didn't join this specific little group in the castle. So Jake could have been bitten by anybody. That or whatever other excuse he gave to Sanu. But we have Jung-won, who is now the newest vampire, a willing participant but working on Jake's side. So we have Sanu, Jae, and Sung-hoon working together. We have Nikki working against Sanu independently. Then we have Jake and Jung-won working against Sanu together. And then we have Hee-sung, who is, I believe, working for Sanu, but he's kind of just a pawn in everybody's game. Jake can use him. Jake can give him these pills to suppress his powers. Sanu can use him, and he's just kind of dealing with this and not ready to pick a specific side. He doesn't see the bigger picture. He just sees what's happening with him, and he's letting these other people help him however they think is right for him. Of course, while biting Jung-won as he's turning, Sanu does say, "I who calls you," which is interesting. And then after Jung-won is bitten, we see him in the same shot that we saw at the opening, but instead the blood is not dripping out of his nose. It's gone. He is now immortal. This signifies the change. He cannot bleed. Jung-won is so new to vampirism that when he's outside in the sunlight, he starts to burn. He starts to crumble and fade away. He hasn't been trained yet. So of course he didn't. We then come to this point where we see Nikki and Sung-hoon. Their lines are red blood, that blood dripping down that blood. It seems on the outside that they're working together, but they're actually not facing each other, and we know that they're not working together. Hee-sung fades to the background behind them. He's not integral to this infighting. He's just a pawn, so he's not even included in this formation. And then we have on Sung-hoon's side, Jake between Sanu and Sung-hoon, and on Nikki's side, we have Jae between Nikki and Jung-won. Jake knows things that Sanu and Sung-hoon do not, while Jae is in between Nikki and Jung-won, and Nikki and Jung-won do not realize that they are going for the same goal. Jae is making sure to keep an eye on them. We have people on each side that are playing for different teams, and there are preventable measures that are making sure that they can't work together. So it's almost like we have Jake in the middle there, making sure he's keeping a close eye on Sanu and Sung-hoon, and then we have Jae keeping an eye on the rest of the vampires to make sure that they are in their place. So then we see Jung-won. He is checking his height against Hee-sung in these old photographs. These are the two most new vampires. Everyone's watching very closely except for Nikki, who's reading. It's possible that he's researching any way to stop the vampirism or to stop this clan from growing and thwart Sanu's powers. But we also see Jake in the back, outside of the circle, because of course he is an outsider and he is observing. The three culprits, of course, Jae, Sung-hoon, and Sanu, are seated on the floor and they are watching very carefully. It's interesting because Hee-sung and Jung-won are the newest vampires. It's possible that they are comparing each other's heights because they're comparing each other's worth to Sanu. They're comparing how their powers might generate when they are able to train with their vampire abilities. At this point, we have the scene where they shoot the arrows to the moon, which is interesting because both the arrows and the moon have to do with Artemis. I assume that Sanu wanted to do this as almost like a tribute to Artemis, because we do still see Artemis being a pivotal part of this in the castle in the up films. So then we have a scene of Jake checking Nikki's eyes. This is the only member that checks on another clan member, and it's almost as if Jake is trying to see what Nikki's intention is. Maybe he's caught on that Nikki isn't fully on Sanu's side, because of course we've seen Nikki being chained up by Sanu. So Jake might be trying to make sure that Nikki knows that Jake can be on his side. So after Jake inspects Nikki, we see him walk by him and Nikki gives him this side-eye glance. It's very curious because it looks like Nikki is nervous. So at this point, he doesn't want to be found out that he is really against Sanu. So he might be thinking, oh no, Jake just found out something about me. Maybe it's in his eyes, I'm not sure. But there was some exchange there that left Nikki feeling uneasy. Unfortunately, Nikki doesn't know that Jake is also on his side. Neither of them do. So now we have the scene of, I believe that it's Jake screaming. I zoomed in on it. I broke it down frame by frame. It looks like Jake. If it's Sanu, it still kind of works. But if it's Jake, I believe that he came into that room after Jungwon was bitten. And I don't think that Jake wanted Jungwon to actually become a vampire. I think that Jake wanted him to be a human with him and pretend. But Jungwon had this idea that if he was a vampire, he could probably better help Jake. So Jake is probably very upset that he couldn't save him and that now Jungwon is vampire. I believe the whole motive for Jake being there is that he wants to stop this. The only curse was supposed to be on Sanu. He doesn't want all these other people to be cursed as well in his eyes. Again, we see Hee-sung struggling, and it's interesting because this time we see Jay briefly raise his hand up, and as Jay raises his hand, it cuts to a shot where Hee-sung raises his hand instantly. I don't know if this is just him following orders. That's the impression I'm getting. It seems like Hee-sung will just follow orders on either side. He believes everyone's doing the right thing for him, and so maybe that is just Jay having a little bit more control over him since Hee-sung is so lost. Jay can really use that to impress Sanu if he can control Hee-sung. And then we see Jay alone in the room that he was with Then we see Jay alone in this room that we've seen him sizing up Jake in the beginning. He looks upset or confused, and that's followed immediately by a shot of Jake in that same room, and he smiles. It's as if he knows that he's proved his innocence to Jay, and from that first interaction in the music video. Then we see Sanu hugging the teddy bear that we've seen Jake holding and screaming. We also saw Sanu have it when he was biting Jungwon. This is showing both a loss of innocence. Sanu, I don't think, wanted to be this bad guy, and Bragio didn't want to be this bad guy, and that's up to interpretation if he is or not. But he might have this little moment where he's thinking about his past when he was a human, when everything was a little bit easier, but he gives this dark look to the camera, and I think that signifies that things have definitely changed at this point. And of course, at the end, we have Jungwon observing everybody as if he is trying to learn different things about being a vampire still, continuing off of that measuring his height with Hee-sung thing. And then we show his fang, just confirming that he has changed. Okay, so now we are going to get into Let Me In. I know this is a lot of detail. I'll break it down at the end in like a timeline, but we get into Let Me In. We start by seeing Sung-hoon under the plastic saying, "I'll give you my blood." I think that is him just signifying that he's going to give himself to Sanu. He's going to give everything, his soul, his blood, anything that he can to serve Sanu. Sung-hoon again, we see playing around with his powers in vampirism. He is playing with the cape, and the lyrics say, "It's your small castle, I want to enter your world," which we know he was turned at the castle. He was the first one who crossed over to this other side, and he has the cape that he was wearing when he first went through the forest and was first changed into a vampire. We then see Sanu grabbing and drinking this liquid. Sung-hoon is the first to notice the red glowing cube, as if he already knew something was going to happen, as if there was a plan for Sanu to drink this cup. While Jay looks completely hypnotized by this red box, Jake just kind of looks curious for a second, and Sanu looks very determined. He's not instantly hypnotized by it. He's able to put the glass down, and then he's able to move over, and it looks like he is not under its mind control. So then when we get up to the glowing box, we see Sanu glance over at Nikki. It's almost as if he doesn't trust him, which we know should be a fact if he's being locked up for different things that Nikki's been doing. But we see Nikki also swallow a big gulp. Nikki seems nervous around Sanu. He doesn't know what to do exactly, but he knows that he doesn't want to be in his position right now. We have Jay saying, "Please let me in," while he's being swallowed by that cube. I think this is just another indication that Jay really wants to take Sung-hoon's spot. He wants Sanu to let him in. He would give anything, I think, to be closer to Sanu. So then we instantly see Sung-hoon and Jay resting on each other's shoulders or their backs. They're looking away from each other. It's just another metaphorical way of showing the clash between them as they're fighting. They're essentially fighting each other for the top spot. The interesting thing is that they're leaning on each other because they need each other. They need each other's support. That's all Sanu wants, is them for them to support each other so that he can get his goals accomplished, but they are fighting. We then see Jake look out into this window and we see floating gummy bears. This is interesting. It's the first time we'll see Jake with gummy bears. We will see it again, but it's interesting because Jake is a human. He needs to eat. These are red gummy bears. It's possible that when they are feeding, when the vampires are drinking blood, that he uses gummy bears to make it seem like he has drank blood as well. I'm not sure. That could be a far-fetched theory, but the point is that if Jake is a human right now, or he's impersonating a human, he probably does need food. So he needs to get that somehow. He needs to snack somehow. He probably does have a stash somewhere. Then we see Nikki saying, "I'll give you my love," while Jay says, "I'll give you my blood." I think this is interesting because it's almost juxtaposing each other. Nikki says he'll give Sanu something that can't really be quantified. It's something that can be changed and you can lie about. But Jay is willing to give Sanu everything: his soul, his blood, his body, everything. It's just juxtaposing those two ideals because, of course, Nikki is lying to him. We see Jungwon flying. Maybe this is him coming into his powers finally. Sanu waves him off. He's very excited because I think at this point Sanu wants to train up Jungwon just like Sung-hoon. He wants Jungwon to have powers so that he can be higher in the ranks and do more for him. It's interesting because we see Hee-sung, Nikki, and Sung-hoon that don't look too impressed or interested in it. Nikki actually kind of looks afraid because, of course, if there's other vampires there getting powers and he doesn't know that Jungwon is a good guy, that would be very bad for him. More people against him. We do see Jake pointing at Jungwon, or pointing towards where Jungwon is flying to. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I would imagine that Jake doesn't want Jungwon to show off his powers too much. He probably doesn't want Jungwon to be swayed onto Sanu's side or to impress him too much. He wants them to lie low together. So then we see these shots of everybody in the forest and then certain people in the forest. It's interesting because we see Jungwon alone, just like he was in Dusk Dawn. And then we also see Sanu and Sung-hoon alone together, and they look like they're chasing him. Maybe a reference to what happened in Dusk Dawn. Then we have Nikki whispering, "Bring it back." Now, I slowed this down, looked at frame by frame. I believe it is to Jungwon. I think this is the time where we are starting to see Nikki, Jungwon, and Jake all try to find other people of the same mind within the clan. I think that Nikki is whispering, "Bring it back," as if to rein in Jungwon's powers. Just like, he's being very subtle about it. He doesn't want to reveal his plan. He doesn't want to be allies just yet, but he's warning him. You don't want to show off your powers too much. At least you want to hide your powers so you can ambush Sanu at some point. I think there's a lot in that little "bring it back." It's almost like, rein it in, Jungwon. Don't do that yet. And then it's interesting because we instantly see Sung-hoon with a knife or a letter opener, either way a sharp object, and it's as if he is watching Nikki and Jungwon's conversation, which he probably is. He probably has super good hearing. It looks like he was watching what was happening. So I think at this point, Sung-hoon suspecting Nikki and Jungwon of some sort of interaction that would be against his king, Sanu. It looks like he's ready to take action in any way possible, maybe not using his powers, making it look like maybe he didn't do it. I'm not sure, because he does say, "Maybe I may hurt you," but he ends up just carving into the wood next to him, and it looks like it's tally marks. It looks like there's 5 of them, so there's 7 members altogether. If he suspects Jungwon and Nikki to be against Sanu and everybody else is on Sanu's side, then maybe the 5 tally marks are just excluding Nikki and Jungwon. He is now not loyal to them. He's not going to help them. It's just the 5 other vampires. As we know, Nikki has already been a problem for Sanu and Sung-hoon, so this probably isn't surprising. He's just grouping Jungwon in with Nikki as a problem that he may deal with at a different time. So now we see Hee-sung and Sanu. I assume they are training in some way or some form. Maybe they're just having fun. But of course, Sanu gets whacked in the face by Hee-sung's branch. Sanu looks very, very disappointed or upset. Not quite angry yet, but definitely not what he was expecting. You don't want to do that to the leader of your clan, for sure. It's almost as if Hee-sung defied him. And the cut that he has doesn't bleed. It doesn't run blood. Like I was saying earlier, I think we still see like the fleshy mark of something being there, especially since he was a turned vampire instead of a bitten vampire, we would see that red mark, but he doesn't actually bleed. The blood doesn't flow. We see Jake with the gummy bears again, and it's interesting because he only stops fiddling with them. He's playing with them. He only stops doing that when he has the light, the flashlight shone on him, and he is surrounded by the members we can see in the background. So that's interesting because he thought he was alone for a second. He was in his own world, but everyone else looked at him and then he stopped. He's like, oh, I shouldn't be interested in that at all. Then we have the group attack on the museum walls, the forest walls. It's possible that they were all caught and put on display because they're vampires. This is probably in Paris, in a museum in Paris. I got that information from the K-Contact show. One of the members had said it on stage that the Let Me In, they referenced that Let Me In takes place in Paris. So that doesn't surprise me. And freak shows and things like that were always a thing in centuries past. So it's possible that they were put on display because some of them showed off their powers and they're outed as a vampire clan, or it is just metaphorical and it is in this cube other dimension wormhole thing, which I know is coming up in this new album at least. But anyways, they bang on the wall. Jay takes the lead on this, which is interesting. It's almost like a challenge to Sung-hoon, like, I'm gonna get us out of this first. It's really just a competition between the two. Sanu and Jake help for a bit, but then they both just stay in the back and watch. Jake doesn't really have a reason right now to help them. Sanu, of course, has everybody else doing his work for him. Then we see the light shine on them, and we have this part where they are frozen in tableau. Nikki covers his eyes from the light. We see Jungwon's eyes glowing, all indications that they're vampires. Sanu's tableau has Hee-sung almost protecting him or grabbing him by the arm, which is interesting. And Sanu is instead looking at the gummy bears. So I think Sanu is starting to catch on to Jake. He's starting to see that there are some things that don't add up here. And he's just focused on these gummy bears. Like, what was Jake doing with them? Why would he be interested in those at all? Why would he even have them? We see Nikki and Jungwon together in their tableau. Perhaps they are now working together. I'm not exactly sure after what happened with the Bring It Back. I don't know how much Jungwon has understood that Nikki is also helping, but it's possible that they have now had this conversation and are working together, in which case we have the three, Jake, Jungwon, and Nikki, all working together at this point. In Jake's tableau, we have him pointing. It's possible that he's pointing at another clan member, because if they were getting caught by the authorities or something like that, there's a good chance that Jake would rat out everybody else because he doesn't want this clan to continue making other vampires or anything like that. If the authorities can deal with them, I'm sure he's pointing at Sanu or Sung-hoon or one of the higher ranking clan members. What he's definitely doing in his tableau is pointing away from Jungwon. At this point, I assume Jake only knows and only trusts Jungwon. He probably doesn't know about Nikki and Jungwon's interaction yet. And so he wants to protect Jungwon. He's always wanted to protect Jungwon. He didn't want him to have this fate. So he's pointing away from Jungwon. He's probably going to protect him if the authorities were to come for any of them. At this point, Sung-hoon has a gummy bear. He's probably helping Sanu figure out the significance of that with Jake. I'm not going to look into it any further than that. But then we get to this part where they reveal themselves in the plastic. The order that they reveal themselves is very interesting because we have the three helpers, essentially. So in the back, the ones that first reveal themselves are the three helpers to Sanu, at least the ones that Sanu believes are helping him. We have Jay, we have Nikki, we have Sung-hoon. He believes that these people, even if Nikki is on the fence sometimes, he believes that they are definitely helping him. And then we have the two newest vampires, which are Hee-sung and Jungwon, and then we have Sanu versus Jake. Those are the last ones that reveal themselves. I thought that was so interesting. We have this imagery of Jungwon in the grave with the members looking down on him. This could just be metaphorical, again, because he was the last vampire to turn. It could be as if he's burying his soul, he's burying his human life, and the members are all just watching, making sure that he is following suit with the rest of them. And then we have Sanu saying, "I'll give you my love," and Sung-hoon saying, "I'll give you my blood." So this is interesting because we have Sung-hoon saying, "I'll give you my blood," just like Jay said earlier, and it's about giving his everything to Sanu. And then we have Sanu saying, "I'll give you my love," as if he's going to take care of them. This could be a lie, but it's most likely that he actually does care for at least Jae and Sung-hoon to some extent, because he created them in his image of him and Celine in the beginning. That being said, we do see leaders all the time like that, lying to their lankies and saying that they really care when they don't, just to get what they want. Once again, we have an ending with Sunu. In Give and Taken, it did end with Sunu. Other than that la 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 part with Jungwon, the song did end on Sunu. So it's interesting that we have this ending shot again on Sunu, and the glass starts to crack on his side, just signifying again the importance and the significance of Sunu, and if he's evil or not, or him just being the catalyst for everything that's happening. Okay, so I broke down everything. I hope that was clear enough. If you have subscribed to me for a while, you know I ramble on. I had everything written out and it was still just, I wanted to catch every detail. But now let's get into the hype, down, and up versions. I'll be honest, I have nothing written down for the down version. Absolutely nothing. I don't know how it connects at all. It was just, like I said, it was like an Adidas commercial or something, or a Nike commercial. I don't know what's happening there. I think it was just a different concept for the album, not related to the story. But let's get into the hype version. So all their films had this red light that we talked about before, except for Jake. Now, Hee-sung's has the least red light. There's a little bit in there for sure, unlike Jake's, but it does kind of beg the question of if those pills that Jake is giving him to suppress his powers are working. Is he turning back into a human? We also see him with fries and food, same as in Jake's. Those are the only ones that we see food. It's possible that Hee-sung has gotten to the point where he does need to eat food again, where he is turning back into a human. We see Nikki playing with the eyeballs and fire. I have some questions, is it showing that he knows some things, he can see some things that are happening within the clan? Has his studies potentially brought him to a point where he can destroy vampires maybe with fire, or maybe it has something to do with the eyes, or is he himself gaining powers? Jae's is also almost all red and has images of fire, which is interesting because of course we have Sung-hoon with the fire powers, and he's always angry at him, even to the point where in Jae's concept films he's cracking his knuckles as if he wants to hurt Sung-hoon. He's finally done, and he plays with this noose. I thought this was, when I first reacted to it, I thought it was a noose. I think it is. I don't think he's actually trying to hang himself or choke himself, but it might be a metaphorical way of saying that he's done with his vampire life. He's not able to serve Sunu anymore, and he's not sure how much more he can give at this point. We've seen Jae be loyal to Sunu and want to take Sung-hoon's place throughout all of these different scenes. It might be too much for him now. He might want to quit. And then we have Sunu also playing with fire. His is all red the entire time. There are like two little scenes where it's not red, and it's like when he's squeezing something and blood is coming from his hand. It's almost like he has everyone's heart in his hand. He is in control. His is all red all the time. He eats an eyeball. So Nikki, we saw playing with them, he pops one into his mouth and he gives like this dark look to the camera. I believe so much that Sunu is now on to Nikki's plan. He's watching him. It's almost like a game of chess. Nikki has found out something about fire and eyeballs, and Sunu is almost taunting him with it. He's like, you can try, but I don't think you're going to succeed. In the up version, we have Hee-sung. He has a brooch. I got this off of one of the people I mentioned at the beginning on Twitter. He has a brooch with Artemis's statue, with Artemis's bust on it. So I believe that what's happening with Hee-sung right now is Jake is really trying to turn him into human, really trying to make sure that his powers are suppressed. At the same time, I can only imagine that Sunu is trying to enhance his powers, make sure that his vampirism is coming in nicely, that he's adapting to it well. I believe that Sunu gave him this bust little necklace so that he had the power and protection of Artemis, so that it would help him in his training. Of course, it's not going to work because we have Jake suppressing him with the pills, but I think that is what Sunu is trying to do, or at least maybe Hee-sung is praying to Artemis under Sunu's rule so that Hee-sung can get more powers as well. We have Sunu and Sung-hoon both holding their masks masks up to their right eyes, and they're both looking at the fire, the candlelight flame. Interesting because we know Fire and Sung-hoon, we know Fire and Nikki now. It's almost like Sanu and Sung-hoon are plotting something against Nikki. We have Sung-hoon playing with the lemon, which is interesting because we have Jake playing with the lemon in the hype version. We have Jung-won, so I think at this point Sanu and Sung-hoon are catching on or investigating their own members. In Jung-won's concept films, he seems the least comfortable being there. He's seated, instead of walking around too much, he's adjusting himself a lot. He looks at the table with curiosity. He doesn't really touch anything. Even when he lifts the cup, he's examining it instead of actually drinking it. So I think this is him not being comfortable. I believe at this point Jung-won is investigating, probably because he's not getting enough information from Jake. I don't know how much Jake has said. I don't know if he's going to say that he was Apollo or that he cursed him, or if he's just going to say, hey, I'm a human and I'm going to pretend and we're going to take down this leader Sanu. So Jung-won might be trying to do his own investigation. He might be very uncomfortable in this room by himself. He's the newest vampire. We see he's sung on the bed. It's as if he's been waiting. Maybe he's exhausted. Maybe he's been training a lot with Sanu. And then he also plays with the lemon, which is interesting. I don't know if that's just a metaphor or it has to do with the fact that he is both on Sung-hoon and Sanu's side as well as Jake's side, which we saw playing with lemons as well. Again, we see he's sung as the pawn in both of their games. Jay in his looks like he's contemplating something. He's looking down at a coin and a jewel of some sort. Again, this begs the question, maybe he's finally fed up with Sung-hoon. Maybe he's thinking about if he can cut and run. Maybe he had some agreement with Sanu that he would be paid and he's not having that. I'm not exactly sure, but he does seem a little concerned and like he is a flight risk. We do see him hold up his mask to his right eye, just like Sanu and Sung-hoon, except for it's askew. Instead of covering his full eye like theirs did, he holds it off to the side. I really think at this point Jay is considering leaving the clan. We also see Nikki holding his mask up to his right eye. Of course, he wants to pretend that he's still loyal to Sanu. We do see Nikki investigating things as well as the bust of Artemis. He's probably investigating thoroughly. He, I believe, will probably be the first one that figures out this Apollo Ambrosio thing. I think that he's done enough research and he's investigating the right things that he might be the one that ends up finding this out. And I don't know what he's going to do with that information, but I think that would happen. That, or he might be investigating Artemis to see if Artemis could help him overthrow Sanu. That's totally possible. Artemis does have that power. Jake in his looks pretty ready for business. It looks like he's preparing himself for something. The mask is on his right eye, but it's interesting because his is custom made for that. Everyone else's has two eye holes like normal and goes over the face. His is one eye and it's on his right side. He cannot even be assumed to be an imposter. It's exactly the same symbol as Sanu and Sung-hoon and Jay and Nikki were doing. They were putting it to their right eyes. So Jake doesn't even need to deal with that, doesn't even need to worry about doing the wrong thing. His is already custom made. It's interesting. It's so interesting to me. I don't know how much it actually means, but it's definitely in line with the other things that we've seen with the masks. Okay, and just a little extra thing is that I saw on Reddit, Sanu Salad on Reddit said if you rearrange the comeback date of 0426, so April 26th, you get 0624, June 24th, which is Sanu's birthday. So I do believe this all has to do with Sanu's birthday, Sanu's bloody birthday, the carnival. I believe that is where this all started, where his clan started, and then we get to where we are now, which is where there's so much infighting, there's so much chess being played, everyone's at stalemate. We have different people hiding the fact that they're vampires, hiding the fact that they're against the leader. We have Jay that might be leaving. There's a lot of crazy things going on. And then here is a quick timeline for you. We have Sanu versus Jake. Jake turned Sanu into a vampire. We have Sanu and Jake spending hundreds of years probably apart. Sanu probably sulks just as Jake wanted and works on harnessing his powers over time and now he's able to go into the sunlight, essentially overthrowing Jake's curse on him. Sung-hoon, an innocent kid, stumbles upon Sunoo's castle, and Sunoo turns him, which starts the events of Sunoo wanting a vampire clan. Jae, who has been a work hand for Sunoo in the castle for years, also asks to be turned so that he can help, since he feels that Sung-hoon is replacing him. He's always been able to help Sunoo, and now he can't. Jae helps to organize a carnival so that Sunoo can build his clan, and Sung-hoon and Jae are probably the ones biting people at this carnival. We have Apollo coming down from Mount Olympus. He's kept an eye on, he's had wolves and things keeping an eye on Sunoo and what's happening, but he's finally come down. He's impersonating a human. He's keeping watch on Sunoo, and he's probably planning to overthrow and end this clan. We have at the Bloody Carnival, or the Bloody Birthday, we have Nikki and Hee-sung being changed. Nikki, of course, does not want to be a vampire. He's trying his hardest against Sunoo's rule. We have Hee-sung, who is a pawn in everybody's game. And then we have Jung-won, who is the newest vampire and working against Sunoo with Jake. So I think at this point we do have Nikki, Jake, and Jung-won working together. My understanding would be that Jake would still protect Jung-won over Nikki, because we've seen Jake actually care about Jung-won throughout this. But I'm sure Jake is not revealing everything that he can to both Jung-won and Nikki, because there's so much that he is at fault for as well. So I'm sure he does not tell them all of that information. Okay, so that was a lot. I'm so sorry how long that was. I hope everything was clear. If you have any questions, let me know. If you have any additional things to add to this theory, let me know. I'm sure it's all going to be proven wrong when we get the new comeback, but I thought it was super interesting. I would actually like to write more about this and develop this into like a story, so I might do that in the future. But I have some ending questions for you guys. What do you think Sunoo's plan is? Do you think he just got bored after so long by himself? Do you think he just craves power, or do you think he does plan on using his clan as revenge against Apollo or Jake? What side do you think Hee-sung will choose? Do you think he is just letting things happen to him, or do you think he's already transferred onto Jake's side? And then, is Jake a good guy or a bad guy? I mean, he did curse Sunoo in the first place, so Sunoo did not start as a bad guy. Is he a bad guy now? Let me know your thoughts on that, because he definitely did not start like that. And I think at the end of this, Jung-won is going to be pivotal for changing things. I think that he is going to have a lot of power. I think that he is going to be almost like a catalyst to setting all of this off. Maybe a pivotal character in the destruction of the clan. Who do you think will bring down Sunoo's reign? Or do you think Sunoo will overthrow everybody? Let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know how likely you think this theory is, or how realistic it is with all the information. And thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed to me, please subscribe to me. Chat with me down below in the comments. Follow me on Twitter. And I will see you in the next video. I will see you for the ENHYPEN comeback.